My name's Alan McGuire. This is Incorruptible 2-minute warning. Let me get the clock going. In 1991, I wrote a lyric about, it was a paraphrase of Mark 8, of what good is it for a man to gain the world if he loses his soul. Here's Jesus in the red letters. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? We have seen a massive culling, a massive falling away, a massive abandonment of scriptural truth, of biblical absolutes in people's lives in the last 20 years. I've been seeing it for the last 40, but especially the last 20 years. And it's happening more and more and more. And it's just the beginning. Even though the harvest is ripe, there's so many weeds among us, among the tares among the wheat. They're just falling like flies, and it's happening rapidly. Christianity is broken. There's something broken about Christianity that it doesn't have any sustainability. It doesn't have longevity. The percentages are leaving. And they're disgruntled. And that's the reason why. Because they didn't give up their life. They didn't choose Messiah over career, over the lust of life, the pride of life, over ambition, over celebrity, over life. They didn't choose Messiah over it. They didn't give up their lives for Messiah like he gave his life up for us. That's why they're not lasting. That's why they don't last. And it's not sustainable. When you don't give your life up for Messiah, this won't work out well because there's rules of engagement. Steps 1, 2, and 3 have to occur before you can get to steps 4 and 5. Most of these people are skipping steps. Most of these people haven't even given up. This is Alan McGuire with the Incorruptible 2-minute warning. Thanks for joining me again, and let's get this going. Terms like free press are quickly disappearing. The term Judeo-Christian isn't even associated with us anymore, and that was one of our greatest definitions as a nation. We were a Judeo-Christian nation. I'm wondering if the term "be like Jesus," or when you come to Jesus, right? When you get saved, we're supposed to be becoming like Jesus, turning into being transformed into the likeness of Messiah, into the likeness of Jesus. Is that still even a thing? Is that even still part of the deal when you come to Christianity? Here's why I ask. Because I don't see a lot of that happening. I'm seeing the, hey, let's just go to church, throw some money in the bucket, and I won't actually really raise my kids. The youth group will do that. And I won't be leading my family in communion or actually modeling Jesus to my wife or children. I'm seeing a whole bunch of that. I'm seeing a whole bunch of like what we talked about yesterday. I'm not really going to deny myself. It's an inconvenience. I'm really not necessarily interested in something like that. So if that's the case, that would explain why Christianity is broken. I mentioned that yesterday too. Here's one of the things I do know, and that's we've been taught that tribulation, antichrist, false prophet, all those things are a bad thing. Well, here's the thing though, without those things, there's no second coming of Jesus. So I'm thinking if we're not living for Jesus now, we're not really interested in him coming back. Well, then what is this then? Well, then Christianity is a morality play. Well, it's not. But if you're making it a morality play, you probably don't have a revelation of the person of Jesus Christ in your life, in your family dynamic, in the relationship with your kids. You're probably not raising them to end up walking in the Lord better than you're walking in the Lord. And then at that case, I'm not quite sure what it is that you're doing because there's nothing cool about this. Christianity is not cool. It's not a morality play. It's not something that you do. It's something you're supposed to be. It's what you are. Hey, this is Alan McGuire coming to you. Incorruptible 2-minute warning. I really wanted to come up with something, I don't know, lighthearted, comical, humorous. Wasn't able to come up with something like that. So, sorry about that. But hey, thanks for joining me. Let's see if we can get this going. All right, check this out. The Proverbs of Shlomo, this is kind of like ties in with what we've been talking about the last couple days. Christianity is broken. Why is it broken? What is going on? Why are we not able to withstand humanity, life? Why are we keep falling away? Why are people just leaving in droves? Well, here's a hint. The Proverbs of Solomon, Shlomo, the son of David, king of Israel, are for, here's why they're Here's why they're written. For learning about wisdom and discipline, for understanding words expressing deep insight, for gaining an intelligently disciplined life, doing what is right, just, and fair, for endowing with caution those who don't think, whoa, stupid people, and the young person with knowledge and discretion. Someone who is already wise will hear and learn still more. Someone who already understands will gain the ability to counsel well. He will understand proverbs, obscure expressions, the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of Adonai, the fear of God, is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and discipline. That's Proverbs 1:1-7. Notice, for gaining an intelligently disciplined life, doing what is right, just, and fair, for endowing with caution those who don't think. The key to understanding and applying the Proverbs of Solomon to your life is found in chapter 1, verse 7. The fear of Adonai is the beginning of knowledge. Chapter 2, verses 1-4 tell us how to obtain and understand this fear of Adonai. If you receive his words and store his commands inside you, check out Joshua 1:1-9. If you pay attention to wisdom, if you incline your mind toward understanding, if you will call for insight, if you raise your voice for discernment, if you seek these things as you would silver, if you search for these things as you would be for hidden treasure, the pearl of great price, then you will understand the fear of Adonai and find knowledge of God. And I can't believe I got that all in there under 2 minutes. See, this is about... This is Alan Aguirre with Incorruptible. 2-minute warning. Over the weekend, Newsweek said that there's something's hurtling towards Earth. It's supposed to pass by us in about 18 hours, but they don't know what it is. We had a monolith in Utah that showed up, disappeared. A monolith in Romania disappeared. Now we have one in California. In the last 6 to 7 months, the United States government has announced twice that they have proof that UFO, extraterrestrial life, does exist, and no one cares. When you understand that our planet was invaded by sons of God are higher than mere angels, the Watchers, who created a subhuman race on Earth, the Nephilim, that wreaked havoc on man and the planet's resources, and coexisted with man and taught him everything we were never to know. And then they, the Watchers, start to experiment with genetics and mixing the DNA of human, plant, and animal life in search for a way to bring immortality to their offspring, the Nephilim, the giants, breaking the most basic of God's commands in the process, everything after its own kind, that's found in Genesis, and perverting all of creation at its DNA level, causing the flood, and through the line of Ham, who returns to the exact geographical location where all of this began, Canaan, Sidonia, at the base of Mount Hermon, and picks up from where they left off pre-flood and rejuvenates Nephilim DNA, bringing back the race and creating hybrids, humans and Nephilim. Enoch calls them half-breeds, from Nimrod, for example. And then God creates a race of humans of his own, Hebrews, Israel, from 2 Gentiles, Abram and Sarai, to counter the demonic strain of humanity on the earth that dwell in Canaan, and then has Abraham walk the entire borders of that land, and 400 years later, Joshua leads this race created by God supernaturally, a nation of kings and priests unto God, to enter this promised land that's occupied by this demonic strain of humanity, and to completely and utterly wipe them out, and they don't, with the final offensive move being to bring the God-man himself, Jesus, into the mix, and for him to bring the final conflict into reality. This is Alan Aguirre with the Incorruptible 2-minute warning. So yesterday we were talking about the aliens and the monoliths, and we were talking about that yesterday, and I really like the idea of this 2-minute warning thing. I've only done it. This is my first week doing it. It's an idea I've had for years. I actually posted about it 4 years ago, and it showed up in Facebook memories, and I was like, man, that's been 4 years and I haven't done it yet, and I need to do it, and so that's why we're doing it. That was about 2 weeks ago. So here we are doing it, and then I came up with the idea. Incorruptible is the title of a book I haven't written yet that I hope to write this year, or this coming year. It's a little edgy, the idea behind Incorruptible is edgy, as you can tell by the graphics and the branding. So I thought, well, that'll be a good format, or not format, but that would be a good brand to do this thing. And then I came up with the idea of 2-minute warning, because the concept behind it is a warning. I've got 2 minutes to rant about something, and and I can't really complete the concept or complete the idea or complete the thought because it's 2 minutes. And so it's a warning, and it's designed to provoke. It should be provoking you to, oh, what is he talking about? Or, what does the Bible actually say? What is he, because if you have any idea about what the Bible says, you should be hearing me paraphrasing pieces of it, in my rants. And then that should provoke you to go and seek it out, with fear and trembling. So that's the idea behind it. I like the idea. I'm behind this. I really like this thing. So yesterday we were talking about monoliths and UFOs and stuff like that. And you can't unpack anything in 2 minutes, and I can't explain anything to any real clarity or depth. I'm trusting that my audience, you, actually have an idea and a clue about what's going on, and so you're understanding these concepts and being able to grasp the ideas. So, and like I said, I'm not here just to complain or, I'm not just here to complain or talk negative. No, that's never been my MO. I'm all about the solution. I'm all about the answers. I'm not just, unlike other people, I'm not about just, about the problem. Because if you don't offer a solution to the problem, then you're part of the problem. I'm not interested in being part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. So that's where we have, like, my Monday night, we do a live Zoom broadcast. It's a discipleship training program. Essentially, it's a devotional. It's free. You can, it helps if you have the book, but right. And then Tuesday morning, I've been doing a show for 2.5 years on Tuesday morning, that's on the Chameleon Church page and on YouTube. And that's where we can, the books and the live streams that I'm doing, that's where I can unpack the answers to a lot of these subject matters, right? This isn't designed to unpack the answers. This is a warning. This is to provoke you. Well, yesterday, while we were talking about monoliths and UFOs and everything, I got to the 2-minute part when by the time I got to the Jesus piece, because the Jesus piece is very important. By the time I got to the Jesus piece, I had like 5 seconds, and then the buzzer went off. You heard this, and because my time was up, and and so I thought, what, today I'm not going to put on the buzzer. I'm not going to put on the clock. I just wanted to talk to you real quick about that Jesus piece, because it really is about the Jesus piece. Because without the Jesus piece, there is no peace. PIECE or PEACE. I don't have a script here. I'm just talking to you. So I wanted to talk to you about that Jesus piece. And because I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk to you about. I literally don't. So I, go through my filing cabinets in my brain about current events or dialogues or conversations I might have had, whatever, and try to pull something out of my pocket to talk to you about. So the Jesus piece. I'm doing everything I possibly can not to get political on here. And I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to get political, but I do have to say something. I do have to say a word or a name that's tied in with politics. That apparently is a huge trigger. I'm not here to trigger you. I need to use this as an example, a real life. See, if the biblical narrative isn't a tangible, real life, real world, December 2020 concept for you, then you're going to be lost. Then you're not going to be able to go forward or grow or mature in these things. So to me, it's very important to have a tangible, real world, I can touch it, type of, whatever thing. Otherwise, it's lost on us. And I truly, truly believe that if the concept of Jesus, the Messiah of the Hebrew God, doesn't transcend time and space, eons, ages, right? This isn't a 2,000-year-old concept for 2,000-year-old guys, for guys back then. No, if the only way the Jesus is Messiah of the Hebrew God thing works, the only way that thing is real is if it transcends time. If it's just as applicable 2,000 years ago as it is today. That's the only way this is real. Otherwise, it's a lie. It's a farce. And not only does it transcend time and age and aeon, but it transcends culture. It transcends whether you're white, black, indigenous, whatever. It doesn't matter. It transcends that. Or it's not true, or it's a farce. And I've been had for the last 40 years. So there's a very prominent thing going on right now, today, December 2020, regarding Jesus. And there's two different Jesuses out there right now. I mean, obviously there's more, but we're going to limit it to these two. There's two Jesuses out there right now. And they're conflicting, opposing Jesuses. Now, God is not schizophrenic. He can't be divided. Jesus said that very clearly in the Gospels, in the red letters. A house divided among itself cannot stand. So I can't be casting out demons in the name of Satan, because I would be canceling it all out. See, and he's talking to the leaders. He's talking to the brain trust of Israel, and they didn't get it. There's your first clue, because we're going to get back to that. The two different Jesuses that are out there are, ready? This is not to trigger you, and it's not to go into politics, and I'm not going to go there. I'm going to, and that's, and I'm going to explain to you why it's important. There's the Jesus there's the Jesus that Christians believe that support a Trump presidency, and then there's the Jesus that Christians believe that are opposed to a Trump presidency. And they're two extremely polar opposite Jesuses. This isn't about Trump. This isn't about the elections. This isn't about ballots or whether it's a conspiracy. No, it's not about that. Here's what this is about. My belief in a Jesus cannot be predicated or based on my personal political agenda or ideals, my personal social justice concept. You know what I'm saying? My belief in Jesus cannot in any way, shape, or form be predicated, founded, or based on, or influenced by my flesh, by who I am as a human, by my flesh, by my feelings, by my thoughts or intellects, how much money I have in the bank, how much money I don't have in the bank, what I do for a living, what I don't do for a living. See, I cannot base, or I cannot have or believe in a Jesus that's based in my image, that's created in my image. That is an automatic foul, okay? That automatically negates the whole concept of my need, your need for Jesus. Your doctrine cannot be based or predicated on your theology. I'm going to give you some biblical examples of what I'm talking about and why this is important, and why this isn't about politics. My position on my political positions or whatever, I'm just going to use the word politics or whatever, isn't based on man, intellectuals, thought leaders. No. It's I do my best to live and I know you do too. See, that's the thing. We can all say that. But here's what I'm going to narrow it down to, because it does do this. Because see, we can all say up here that, oh, we believe in Jesus, we serve God, we're spiritual beings, but then as you filter and as we sift it through the strainer, as we strain these ideas that are floating up here and bring it down to that funnel, that narrow funnel, we start seeing that, oh, that's actually not true. What you're saying up here actually isn't true, because when it gets down, this is what's really going on. Okay, that's what I want to do real quick. Well, I don't know how quick it's going to take, but I'm sorry. I have to go with the prophetic words that were spoken of regarding this man 8 to 12 years before they actually happened. Okay. I'm going to go out on the limb, and it's not a limb because most of you already know this, but my position on the Trump presidency is based on the prophetic word of vetted prophets, prophetic voices, prophetic men and women that have been around a long time. Not Wolf Blitzer or whoever, not any of those people. Because I don't live my life based on those things. I live my life based on the Spirit of God, based on the Bible, the biblical narrative. But then so my opponent can say, well, the Bible says this, or Jesus says this, and Trump contradicts that. Okay, but see, you've already jumped the shark. The prophetic word of God said this. I'm going with that. Here's a biblical example. The Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders in Jesus' time were convinced, they were absolutely convinced, whether or not they understood what the Bible was saying or whether or not they had an agenda, because we know it was both. We know they had an agenda because they didn't want to lose faith with Rome. They didn't want to lose their position with Rome when it came to leading the people. Well, that automatically makes them wrong, doesn't it? Well, yeah, it actually does. But not just that, but they didn't understand what was going on biblically either. These are the biblical leaders of Israel. They're supposed to know what's going on. They're supposed to have this understanding. They're the ones that are leading these people. And they were wrong. So here's what they were thinking. Well, doesn't the Messiah come from Bethlehem? Jesus is from Nazareth, so he can't be the Messiah. Well, all they had, based on that false narrative, based on that practical understanding in the flesh, he can't be Messiah. He's not from Bethlehem. He's from Nazareth. They were saying he wasn't the Messiah. Well, that's a big mistake. That's a pretty big mistake to make. And it's a pretty big mistake to make based on your practical reasoning, based on your flesh, based on your carnal mindedness. That's what this comes down to. See, that's what we're talking about. Hold on 1 second. This is real life here. I'm live. I'm live on Facebook right now. Do you not have a key? Do you have a key? Oh, okay. So I love it. Live television. Live streaming. Carnal mindedness. Based on their carnal mindedness, and that's usually going to be supported, right? Your carnal mindedness is going to be supported or balanced out with your agenda. Because if you don't have an agenda, then you should be deferring or defaulting to your spiritual mind, right? You don't want to walk in the flesh, you want to walk in the spirit. Because the flesh and the spirit are at enmity with each other. That's what your New Testament tells you. So the Pharisees or the leaders, whether they were Pharisees or the Sanhedrin, whether they were Pharisees or I can't even remember their names. Gosh, sorry. They had an agenda and they weren't thinking spiritually. They were thinking with their carnal mind, and they were convinced that Jesus was not Messiah, which is why they did what they did and why they ended up killing him. They're on the wrong side of things. See, the spirit of prophecy was saying that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah. So it was on them, not God. It was on them to align themselves with the spirit of prophecy, to figure it out, to do the hard work of figuring it out. How could this possibly be the spirit of prophecy? How could this possibly be God when it contradicts what we understand and know to be true? Messiah comes from Bethlehem, not Nazareth. That's the example we're going with. It's not a hypothetical. That's really what was going on. Plus, he hangs out with sinners. Messiah wouldn't hang out with a sinner. He'd be hanging out with us. Plus, he sided with tax collectors and prostitutes, male and female. How could that be Messiah? He should be siding with us, the religious leaders of the day. See, they didn't have a spiritual grasp of what God was doing regarding Messiah. They were basing it on what they felt, what they thought their narrative, their preconceived ideas and notions, their biases, their prejudices, their carnal reasoning, not what the Spirit of God was doing or saying. They were not deferring to the spirit of prophecy, which your New Testament says is the testimony of Jesus. So because they insisted on looking at this guy based with their flesh, based on their earthly eyes and their earthly reasoning and their carnal mind and not their spiritual mind, they were not capable. It was impossible for them to have anything to do with the spirit of prophecy that God was doing. And so they rejected Jesus as Messiah. Look at Saul. Saul is, man, on a fast track to possibly being the major. He was a disciple of Gamaliel, which was like the uber rabbi. This guy had so much power and influence. I'm going to say influence because of that influence, he got the power. Saul of Tarsus, the Pharisee, who he himself says in your New Testament epistles was blameless when it came to following the law, the Torah, obedience of the commandments of God. He said he was blameless in doing that. This guy had so much influence with the Sanhedrin that he got letters, he got permission, documentation, legal documentation to eradicate Christianity, to kill Christians and to put them in prison. And he did so because what they believed in this imposter that they had already established as an imposter, Jesus of Nazareth. They believed he was the Messiah. And because they believed he was the Messiah, they were preaching and saying all this stuff that they were convinced was going against the biblical narrative, was going against the Bible. Are you connecting these dots? Or are you that far off that you can't connect the dots that I'm connecting? I'm going to keep helping you here. Paul was convinced he was doing God's will. Paul was convinced he was doing God's bidding. Paul was convinced he was doing what God would have him do, and that's kill Christians. Because they were false and they were wrong. They believed in an imposter named Jesus of Nazareth who wasn't the Messiah based on their understanding, based on their prejudice, based on their narrative, based on their agenda. They weren't looking at Jesus with spiritual eyes. They were looking at Jesus with their carnal eyes, and that led them to send this guy out, Paul, to eradicate Christianity. 1,000% on the flesh, based on theology. Their doctrine was based on theology, not on the word of God, which is absolute and it doesn't contradict itself, ever. So, Jesus even said, they will drag you into the synagogue and have you killed, thinking they're doing my Father's will. He's talking about our tomorrow. He's talking about what's happened in the past since he's resurrected and what we're looking at going forward. They are not in alignment. See, Jesus said God is spirit, and you have to worship God. You have to deal with God with the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. Paul would later write, the Apostle Paul would later write that some of you have a form of godliness that denies this power of the Spirit, of the Holy Spirit. See, the spirit of prophecy prophesied over this man, Trump, 8 to 12 years before it happened. He was never supposed to win, ever, 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 ever. But if God wills it, and God did it, right? The prophecy, the narrative is Isaiah 45, right? It's about Cyrus, and you might have heard that by now. God picked a pagan leader named Cyrus, a heathen, called him his son, called him his anointed, and used that pagan to reestablish Israel in the land after their Babylonian exile, helped Israel build the wall, helped Israel reestablish themselves in their capital of Jerusalem, and helped Israel rebuild the temple. A pagan man. I guarantee you there was a group out there of Christians, of Israelis that were crying foul. There's no way this Cyrus guy, God would be behind this Cyrus guy. He's what's one of those? Oh yeah, he's called a dog. People call him a dog. You know the actor that says that. They hated this Cyrus guy so much. They were convinced there's no way God could be behind that. Again, this isn't about politics. This is about the crucial need for you to be on the side of the Holy Spirit, to be on the side of the spirit of prophecy, to be on the side of the testimony of Jesus. It doesn't matter. This isn't about Trump or politics. This is about your real world life, your marriage, your family, your relationships, your relationship with God. Because I guarantee you, if you're not on the side of the spirit of prophecy, which your New Testament says is the testimony of Jesus, you're going to get everything else wrong too. There was a handful, small, always a remnant, of Pharisees that came to Jesus at night, and they said, we know you're a prophet sent from God. They called him Rabbi. We know you're the Messiah. And came to him secretly for instruction, for teaching, because they knew that he was Messiah. It didn't jive with the popular majority, because the popular majority had the influence to have this guy crucified, remember? Yeah. And they had that influence with the people, right? Remember, think about it. They went to the leadership and they were like, well, there's nothing wrong with this guy. So they had to rile up the people, right? There's your mainstream media. They had to, if we can get the numbers behind us to yell Barabbas, 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 crucify him, crucify him, crucify him, it might lean in our favor. And it did. This is the way it's always worked. Jesus knows this. God knows how this planet works. You know, there's two more examples I want to give you, because it's really important for you to side with the spirit of prophecy, which will probably 100% of the time, go against what you feel, what you think, what you believe, what you know, right? My ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. That's what God said. That means every revelation of Jesus is going to be offensive because it doesn't fit in your paradigm. It doesn't fit with how you think, your ways, because he's beyond that. The rebellion of Korah. Don't know if you know about the story. It's in the Old Testament. Moses is leading the children of Israel from Egypt to the Promised Land. And because of the attitude of Israel in the desert, they're wandering now. They're not just going straight there because these people were not ready. They were not in a psychological, spiritual, emotional, physical place to actually go and inherit their promised land. We'll get to that on the next example. So they're wandering in the desert. They don't really have a lot of water. They don't have a lot of food. They're eating manna. It doesn't. So a man named Korah decided not to align himself with the spirit of prophecy. What's the spirit of prophecy in this example? Moses is your leader. Moses is the prophet sent from God to lead you from Egypt. Moses has already proven himself to be this guy. There's these things called the 10 plagues of Egypt. The last one being angel of death going through the land, killing all the firstborn. You know the story. You saw the movie. And then how about the other one, the one after that? And that's the Red Sea, or the Sea of Aqaba, opens up, and then Egypt, Pharaoh and his army go across, and the waters, and Larry Norman says, and the Egyptians all took a bath. Dum 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 dum. Okay, so he's already proven himself to be God's man. This guy is thinking, Korah, he decides, well, no, he can't be God's man. It's impossible. We've made a mistake somewhere. This cannot be God's man. He's a false prophet because he promised he was going to deliver us to the promised land. He was going to get us to the promised land. And we're wandering out here in the desert. I don't have any land. I don't have any livestock. I have nothing. I'm out here in the desert. I don't know when I'm going to drink water next. I'm eating this crap called manna, and I haven't had meat. I'm hungry. I'm wandering in the desert. A godly leader sent from God prophetically wouldn't have us walking around in circles dying in the desert. And this guy wasn't necessarily a slacker. I mean, this guy's a leader. He's part of the Levitical line. He convinces 200 plus Levitical priests to side with him in a rebellion to overthrow Moses. It's a big deal. Your responsibility is to be able to discern between a Korah and a Moses. You have to be able to discern between a Korah and a Moses. Life or death hang in the balance. If you don't choose correctly, you can die. And people did. A whole bunch of people died that day and the next morning. Over 14,000. Because they were on the wrong side of the spirit of prophecy. They were absolutely convinced they were on doing God's will. For the sake of the people, we have to overthrow Moses, this false prophet, and his brother. Besides, his stuttering just drives me up the wall. He can't be from God. And we have to do this for the sake of the people. I truly, truly believe Korah was trying to do the right thing for the sake of the people. But good intentions don't matter. Only the Spirit of God and his anointed will matters. That's the only thing that matters, not your intentions. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is God's will. And whether it looks right, according to you, whether you like it or not, whether it feels right, whether it sounds right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You submit to the absolute will of God. You have to here's the key. You have to have the discernment. See, in the same way right now in December 2020, you have to have the discernment on whether or not this guy is actually an anointed leader by God based on the prophets and the prophetic word. But Alan, I don't believe in prophecy. I can't help you then. See, because then you just threw away the majority. Sorry, my Bible's in here. You just threw away the majority of the New Testament, let alone the Old Testament. I can't help you at that point. If you don't believe in prophecy or prophets in December 2020, I can't help you. You probably should not be watching this because I will end up upsetting you at some point. See, I can't help you with that. Paul, your apostle to the Gentiles, says, don't despise speaking, don't despise prophecy, and don't keep people from speaking in tongues. So if you don't believe in prophecy and speaking in tongues, I seriously can't help you. And I'm not quite sure what you're doing as a Christian. But that's another topic. That's another 2-minute warning. If you're on the wrong side of the spirit of prophecy, which is the testimony of Jesus, it's not going to be good. I know, I really truly believe Korah was trying to help the people, and he thought that Moses was not God's leader for the people because he was a false prophet, because they weren't in the promised land. I mean, that's literally part of the narrative. If you read it in the Bible, Leviticus, Numbers. I don't have any land. You haven't brought me to the promised land, he said. So you're not a fit leader. You need to be replaced. I'm going to replace you. And because they were erring they were on the wrong side of this thing, they were eliminated, as well as the 200 plus Levitical priests that he had convinced to side with him. You have to see. I fully understand if you don't have spiritual discernment, because I'm a Christian and I've been a Christian in the United States of America for at least 37 years. And I know that they don't teach you this stuff here in this country and the Western Christianity for the most part. The majority of you were never taught how to discern in the spirit realm because your leaders don't have that ability, and they can't teach you what they don't know themselves. So it's a lot easier to say, oh, that's not for today. I know you probably don't have that ability. So, but it's on you to get it. I'm sorry, it is. That's your New Testament teaching. Read Paul in the New Testament. It is on you. It is your responsibility. It is 1,000% on you to figure that out. You have to get spiritual discernment so that you can discern between a Moses and a Korah, or you could die, or at least not make it to your prophetic inheritance. But then there's that P word again, prophetic inheritance, your tomorrow. The last example, because I don't even know how long we've been doing this for, the last example I have for you is Joshua and Caleb, the 12 spies that were sent into the land for 40 days to spy out the land and come back with a report. 80%, that's 9.6, I think, if I remember my math correctly. 80% of 12 is 9.6. 80% of the spies came back and put fear, doubt, and unbelief in the people, in the heart of the people, with the report that the Nephilim, which we could have touched on yesterday. Well, we did touch on yesterday. Yesterday we touched on the Nephilim, Genesis 6. The report was this. They are, not only are the Nephilim in the land of promise that we're supposed to go and possess, but they rule it. I mean, they're all there. The land of Canaan was the actual hive, the center of the earth for this demonic strain of humanity that aren't entirely human, the Nephilim, the giants from Genesis 6. So 10 of the 12 spies came back saying, oh my gosh, it's inhabited by the Nephilim and they're going to kill us. And there's no way we can do this. There's no way we can go into the land of Canaan and successfully eradicate this demonic strain of not entirely human things, because we're like grasshoppers to them. And it put so much fear and doubt in the people that was like the big tipping point in the narrative of Israel leaving Egypt, getting to the promised land, and why that whole entire generation was eradicated and not able to actually enter the land. It was the sons of promise under Joshua that made it, and that went in and took care of this, that entered the promised land. But see, 10 out of the 12 spies were not on the bright side, on the correct side of the spirit of prophecy. What's the spirit of prophecy? It's a 400-year-old prophecy that was given Abram before he was Abraham, on how this is your promised land, the land of Canaan, and in 400 years your descendants are going to go and inhabit it and possess it. So the spirit of prophecy is that, oh yes, regardless of the giants, whether or not the giants are in the land, this land is yours. And you will possess it, and you will rule it, and you will inhabit it, and you will drive out the giants from the land. That's the spirit of prophecy. 80% of the spies didn't line up with the spirit of prophecy and instead gave a bad report, put fear, doubt, and unbelief in the people. The mainstream media said, you're going to die. You and your little ones, go read it. It's in Numbers. You're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. But then there's two guys, 20%, Joshua and Caleb, that went, wait, no, don't listen to them. Their favor, God has taken their favor from them because he did. It was the end of their reign and rule of Canaan, the giants, the Nephilim. It was their day had come to be eradicated by the hand of Israel. And these two guys said, no, you got a Jew and a Gentile, Joshua and Caleb. No, don't listen to the bad report. Don't heed the bad report. God's on our side. God's going to give us the favor and deliver these people into our hand. The giants will be our bread. They will be our provision. Only 20% of them, the spies, believed in God's spirit of prophecy. The other 80%, which is way beyond the majority, didn't believe in the spirit of prophecy, gave a bad report, did everything they could to convince the rest of the people to side with them and not the other two guys. In fact, when Joshua and Caleb gave their spiel in front of the people that were totally losing their minds about how no, God's with us. God's going to deliver these people to our hands. He's going to give us the giant. We're going to win. We can do this thing. They wanted to stone them. Their answer was, the answer wasn't, oh, okay, let's side with the spirit of prophecy. Let's get in alignment with our spirits, with what God is doing and saying, and not our flesh. No, they didn't do that. They picked up stones to kill them. They were going to stone them, and then God manifested. He showed up in a physical, tangible way. 80% opposed, went against the Spirit of God. 80% of the Christians went against the prophetic Spirit of God and decided to navigate this with their flesh, with their practical reasoning, with what they could see intangible in the carnal, and then did everything they could to convince the rest of them to side with them, because misery loves company. The other two guys that did side with the Spirit of God, they wanted to kill them. Well, I think you know the rest of the story. They all died in the desert. And the 10 spies that gave the bad report all died of a plague. The other two guys, the conspiracy theorists, the ones that were seduced, those are the words that are being used for people like me. You're seduced, you're a conspiracy theorist. Those two guys, they lived long lives. They entered the promised land. They kicked giant ass in the name of God, because they sided with the spirit of prophecy, which is the testimony of Jesus, which Paul says was in the desert with them in 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12. And he says, don't be ignorant to what happened to Israel in the desert and how it happened to them and what happened to them and why it happened to them, because it was written down as a warning to you Gentile Christians in the last days.